Hey guys, I get it. When you're about to drop a few $1,000s on a sewing machine, you start wondering if you're really getting something that'll actually make your projects easier, or just another heavy metal box that sits under a table. I've been talking to a bunch of upholstery hobbyists and professional leatherworkers who just finished their first big jobs, and the one thing they all kept circling back to was the fear of buying a machine that can't handle the thick materials they need without constantly jamming or slipping. If you're sitting there with a stack of canvas, a few old car seats, or a piece of marine vinyl and you're not sure whether this is the right tool before you spend the money, stick around. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's set the scene. The Consew 206RB5 is marketed as a walking foot, industrial-grade machine that comes as a complete package. You get the main unit, a sturdy table, and a servo motor right out of the box. That's a big part of the appeal because most of the heavy-duty machines you see on industrial floors require you to buy a separate work table and motor, and those extra components can easily push the total cost past $5,000. The everything you need to start sewing claim is true in the sense that you can literally unpack the box, hook up the power, and start stitching through thick leather or upholstery foam without hunting for a compatible foot or motor elsewhere. Now, who should actually consider grabbing this machine? If you're a professional upholsterer, a shoe or leather craftsman, or anyone who regularly works with materials that are at least a 1/4 inch thick, this is the sort of tool that can save you hours of back-and-forth adjustments. The walking foot, a triple feed system that moves the fabric, the needle, and the feed dogs in lockstep, is a game-changer for heavy fabrics. I watched a small boat repair shop use it to stitch through marine canvas and vinyl, and the seam held up perfectly after being exposed to saltwater spray for weeks. The same shop mentioned that using a regular straight feed machine would have meant stopping every few stitches to realign the material, which would have doubled the labor time. If you're into making custom leather jackets or building furniture pieces that require a robust seam, the ability to run a 10mm stitch length is another practical advantage, because longer stitches on thick material prevent the seam from pulling apart under stress. On the flip side, if you're more of an avid crafter who mainly sews lightweight cotton or polyester quilts, or you're a home sewist who only occasionally dabbles in upholstery, the 206RB5 might be overkill. The machine's size alone, it sits on a built-in table that's roughly the footprint of a small desk, means you'll need a dedicated space in your workshop or garage. It's not something you can easily tuck into a bedroom closet. Moreover, the servo motor is designed for consistent, high-torque operation, which translates to a louder motor hum than you'd find on a typical domestic sewing machine. In a quiet home environment, that might be a bit distracting. Let's dive into the practical strengths that become apparent after you've actually got it running. The first thing I noticed when the machine was turned on was the smoothness of the feeding action. The triple feed mechanism, combined with the extra long stitch capacity, let me pull a 2-inch thick piece of old leather through the machine without any noticeable tugging. In real-world terms, that means you can sew together a leather seat cushion and a frame in a single pass, rather than stopping to manually hold the material or risk a seam that gaps under pressure. The high foot lift, 9/16 of an inch, also keeps the foot clear of the workpiece, which is essential when you're dealing with bulky upholstery foam. That lift allows the foot to ride over thick padding without compressing it, preserving the integrity of the foam while the needle does its job underneath. Another practical benefit is the inclusion of the table. It's not a flimsy add-on. The table is made from heavy-gauge steel and has a raised surface that supports large projects without sagging. I saw a small workshop where the workers used the table as a makeshift assembly line. They'd lay out multiple panels of canvas, stitch each one, then flip the table over to start the next set. The stability of the platform eliminates the wobble you get when you try to mount a heavy industrial machine on a regular workbench, and that wobble can be the difference between a clean seam and a snagged thread. Now for the weaknesses that tend to show up after the initial excitement has worn off. First, the machine is heavy. The main unit plus table tip the scales at around 150 pounds. While that mass contributes to its rigidity, it also means you'll need at least 2 people to move it safely, and you'll want a permanent spot for it rather than expecting to shift it around often. Second, the servo.